The origin of life. According to Melanin, the RNA world hypothesis can't explain the origin of genetic information. RNA world advocates suggest that if the first self-replicating life was based upon RNA, it would have required a molecule between 200 to 300 nucleotides in length. However, the order of those nucleotides cannot be explained by any chemical or physical law already known. The odds of 250 nucleotides in an RNA molecule by chance is below the universal probability bound. To evolve into the DNA protein-based life that exists today, the RNA world would need to evolve to convert information to proteins. This process of transcription and translation requires a large suite of proteins and molecular machines. Therefore, the origin of life cannot be explained arising from unguided chemical processes. The life cannot exist unless both the genetic information and transcription translation machinery are present at the same time, and both speaking the same language. The entire system must come into being as one unit, or it is worthless. The nucleotide sequence is meaningless without a conceptual translative scheme and physical hardware capabilities. In the case of the operant hypothesis, there is a primordial soup or solution containing many essential elements and compounds, although no one knows where they come from. Supposedly, early life on Earth formed through a series of reactions that made simple compounds gradually more complex. But the operant's primordial soup or water-based sea of simple organic molecules, out of which life arose via unguided chemical reactions, faces numerous scientific difficulties. Newest addition is the occurrence of life as matter of inevitability. That means that matter will generally develop into systems that, when driven by an external source of energy, and surrounded by a heat bath, become increasingly efficient at dissipating energy. This heat bath probably refers to melanin. Earth formation. When the Earth formed some 4.5 billion years ago, it was a sterile planet inhospitable to living organisms due to presence of hot, noxious gases, erupting volcanoes, and raining meteors. 1 billion years later, we have a watery planet with microbial life. Life began in 4 steps of increasingly complexity: cosmic, geological, chemical, and biological. The life evolved in nutrient-rich oceans originated by the same process, the unsuspected intrinsic property of melanin to absorb light and dissipating it through water dissociation, as chlorophyll in plants. The problem with theories on the origins of life is that they don't propose any experiment that lead to the emergence of cells. Before there was life on Earth, there were molecules. But they were molecules that were formed in a random war, far away from the prodigious order observed in living organisms. How they began to form in an orderly, consistent manner, and sooner or later they started replicating, has been one of science's enduring mysteries. Living things can make chemical elements, not only organic matter. So far it has been considered the origin of life without even mentioning that transmutation was possible in living beings. But since the year 1600, it is known that the plants have chemical elements that the soil where they are located does not possess. Hence the idea of the alchemists about the philosopher's stone was born. Transmutation is a word that has been demonized because of the alchemists, who sought to transform lead into gold. And in the end, they were right, but this transformation was attained hardly in relatively recent dates. Sodium appears to be critical in the chain of chemical elements because even the vegetable kingdom, it is difficult to find plants with high sodium levels, except for broccoli containing, on average, 33 milligrams per 100 g of the plant. Sodium could be considered as the building block of chemical elements with highest number of protons, such as Mg, P, Ci, K, and calcium. Thereby, it is widely used in the metabolism of living beings. In the case of chemical elements commonly found in living thing, we have something as a general order. We could say that the coming and going of the protons between the different chemical elements is determined by several factors, but one of the important ones is the available energy from melanin. Depending on the balance of the physico-chemical variables present, the formation transmutation of the necessary for life chemical elements will be given in such or such manner it is possible that, from hydrogen, melanin can give rise to many elements, mainly those related to life. For example, carbon are 6 hydrogens together, oxygen 6 protons, which would explain the presence of water and oxygen on planet Earth. Therefore, glucose is the universal precursor of any organic matter in plants and animals by the carbon chains it contains and the order so precise of them. Once it enters the body, the carbon chains are transformed in several and precise ways, this is, elongated, rotated, combined, sectioned, etc., but always in the same way and with the same exactness over millions of times and millions of years. But our body can only do it with glucose and its derivatives, similar and related. If we administer carbon alone, for example, mineral, without having the sequence of glucose, simply our body cannot metabolize it. The atoms or molecules that the body requires to replenish every day are the biomolecules that for one reason or another are degraded and are no longer useful or recyclable, our body takes from food, but they must have a similar story to ours. That is to have been formed based on the photosynthesis, either chlorophyll or melanin. Our body cannot metabolize substances that go so back in evolution. It must have a certain degree of previous processing. Like our metabolism, the carbon atoms and chains of the molecules of glucose are easily assimilated, and from there our body builds the biomolecules it requires to constantly replace them in one or another tissue or cell of the organism. Glucose is as important as a universal precursor of biomass that is not normally excreted, and which can be found in urinalysis, are compounds that derive from it and or its respective metabolites. Something similar we could point out to sodium, as it could be considered as one of the main building blocks, but of the electrolytes, for the reasons mentioned above. And now that the role of glucose has been discerned as a source of biomass but not energy, we can remark the role of water as the substrate par excellence to complete the process of transformation of light into chemical energy through dissociation, without detriment to the other biological functions of it, starting with being the universal solvent. The origin of the chemicals elements in the stellar space can also be explained by the melanin, as these form large masses of the size of galaxies or more. The formation of chemical elements has ceased to be a monopoly of the stars. Living organisms can also do it, and apparently on a daily basis. Conclusion. Biology is entering a new era. The discovery that molecular hydrogen is the source of energy of the cell, and that it obtains it by dissociating the molecule of the water, which implies the need to deeply reorganize our concepts about cell metabolism. Glucose cannot provide the energy that its own metabolism requires, and only contributes with the carbon chains that our body uses to synthesize the organic molecules that make up us. But the energy required to impel and carry out the complex biochemical reactions necessary to the interior of the organism and the cells is obtained from the visible and invisible light. Melanin has gone from being a simple solar filter to be the central molecule of life. Any changes that occur inside the cell or the organism as a whole, it depends entirely on the chemical energy that emanates from the melanin in the form of molecular hydrogen and high-energy electrons. The approximately 7,000 chemical reactions already described in the literature about cellular metabolism will have to be rethought based on the energy of melanin and not glucose. The glucose molecule, without the presence of the energy of the melanin, it would be an inert molecule, or even more, it would not even exist, because the formation of the glucose, which is an exact process, requires quite exact energies, like those that come from the melanin. The way in which the melanin dissociates and reassociates the water molecule, that is, liquid gas, could be represented as 0 and 1, like a binary code, which abound in nature. Therefore, it is possible that the melanin not only delivers energy, but also information. Liquid gas could be represented as 0 and 1 like a binary code, which abound in nature. Dark matter, a single candidate, would be the most elegant solution, but is asking a great deal of any one sort of thing that it be cold enough to settle down into the Milky Way disk and simultaneously hot enough to remain much less clustered than the superclusters over the age of the universe. However, if melanin is able to act in two ways, as a single substance in nature that seems to have something like two specific heats, one high, when the temperature is high, and absorbs much, letting out little or no, and when the temperature is low, the melanin is capable of acting as a substance with low specific heat. This hardly absorbs and releases more heat than it receives. Dark energy, the energy that makes stars move slowly, is not a random energy, is a process that seems to be very careful, as is true anywhere in the cosmos that is likely to be observed, nor is it an energy that depends on a particular source. So the fact that it is a form of conventional energy in the cosmos and is transformed by the dark matter that very probably is melanin, and if any molecule is consistent in structure-activity relationship is melanin, anywhere that this will act. The likewise, absorbing any kind of energy and leads it to levels found within relatively narrow ranges. If the energy is much, then is reduced, if the energy is low, then is increased. Melanin is able to absorb any kind of energy, and the force of gravity is not an exception, thus it's absorbed and consequently dissipated through the dissociation. In the case of the universe, the galaxy-sized mass that forms melanin produced a powerful but constant effect on the adjacent stellar bodies, and so great is the melanin mass that its effect on gravity is conceivable that negative or repulsive gravity can be generated. But it is not a whimsical effect, is a carefully produced indeed, it modulated by the intrinsic property of melanin to dissociate the water molecule. We have observed in our laboratory experiments, the melanin tends to approach energy sources and surround them. And the same is true of the dark masses seen in the cosmos. Melanin in liquid and solid state. Thermographic image showing the liquid melanin and its homogeneity in temperature and the difference with the surrounding structures. Particle of melanin in solid state observed through the light microscope. Melanin in space, observed in M66, with his characteristic behavior approaching to energy sources that surround them. In another region of space, look at the dark brown coloration of melanin approaching the energy sources. Melanin hundreds of light years away, and the color is the same. Melanin forms large galaxy-sized mass in stellar space. Source: NASA website. Einstein was quite right in saying that the geometry of space-time-dependent distribution of energy, and inside the cell, is the same. Furthermore, the energy distribution is not completely at random, i.e. no energy is generated and produces its effects randomly, but there is something that modulates it in a very consistent way, through the entire observable universe, and it shows that melanin has to do, because in reality, the changes in energy or temperature we observe in stellar space could be even more abrupt if melanin was not present. The function of melanin tempering allows Sugener is organization of the entire universe and thereby the cell, and that stellar motion follows the same pattern throughout the observable universe all. If melanin is present throughout interstellar space, also exerts its modulating function of energy as in the cell and body happens, both in the distribution of the same as up and down. Excerpt from the book Pyramids of Montauk. Tahuti or Thoth, the function of Tahuti Thoth and his role in creation itself digs much deeper. He was the god of numbers. Throughout history, this information has been primarily relegated to the various secret societies of civilization. One of Tahuti's greatest secrets was known as the process of tetragrammaton. It is found in the Bible and in the dictionary, but a complete understanding of the term is deliberately obscured. Books on witchcraft and secret societies will sometimes teach a portion of tetragrammaton and say that it is highly secretive and not to be spoken of and will be learned after a long process of initiation. Aleister Crowley recognized that the tetrahedron is the basic genesis of life and cannot be overstated enough. All shapes can be derived from the tetrahedron. The DNA spiral, which is the very seed of life itself, can be easily derived through tetracking. If you stack 33, a master number in numerology, tetrahedrons face to face, it will form a spiral or helix shape. If you splice this spiral of 33 tetrahedrons in half, it will form two helixes, which duplicates the form of DNA exactly. Once this done, the number of solid geometric faces on the two helixes is 66.666. This is why Crowley and others have called 666 the number of man. It is encoded in our DNA. There is another key correspondence to 666 in the periodic table of chemistry. This has to do with carbon, which is known as element number 12. All life on this planet is considered to be carbon-based because the carbon atom is conspicuously present in all living things. Carbon has 6 electrons, 6 protons, and 6 neutrons. Again, we have 666. Crowley was keenly aware of the significance of 666.